Hey everyone, this is David Brown with the migration update for March 31st, 2023 from the Braddock Bay Hawk Watch. Today was overcast with periods of rain and a light southerly wind, and the count was not conducted today just because of those unfavorable conditions. Before we get into the forecast for the next few days, since it's the end of the month, I thought we would compare how this month's total compares to March of previous years. So if we look here on hawk count, and I'll put a link to this, you can compare March versus previous years. If we look at this year, we had 9,128 total migrants, which was less than last year. Now, last year we had a really big year with 14,000, year before 8,500, year before 11,700, and then after that 4,000, 3,000, 5,000. So seems like this year was a little on the higher end. But let's take a look species by species, because that's really where the more interesting information is. And a lot of the March total depends on the turkey vulture migration. And some years, the peak of the vultures come right at the end of March. Other years, we don't get the peak until April, beginning of April. So just because the March number is low doesn't mean anything bigger for the season other than maybe the turkey vultures are just a few days later. So first of all, if we look at the observation hours, for March of this year, we had 171.5, which was actually quite a bit more than last year, even though last year we had a really high total. Part of that was that I had missed a few days because of some medical issues, and the weather was really poor during that period anyway. And then exactly 1 year ago today, March 31st, we had a huge turkey vulture day with about 10,000. So that's why the numbers ended up being huge for the low number of observation hours. But the other years before that, 193, 205, 231. So lower this year just because we had a few rainy days and fewer days with extended hours. Looking at black vultures, we had no black vultures this March, but last year we had 2, 0, 2, 7, and then for a bunch of years we didn't have any. So it's fairly typical to not get any black vultures in March, but hopefully we'll get a few for the season. For turkey vultures, we had right around 8,000, which was down from the 13,000 last year. Again, we just had that one huge day. Before that, 6,600, about 10,000. But really before that, the numbers were pretty low, 3,000, 2,000, 4,000. Here's 7,500. But as you get farther back, the numbers were lower just because turkey vultures have been increasing over the past several years. So it makes sense that the monthly totals would be increasing. For ospreys, we had 2 compared to past couple years, 7, 2, 8, 5, 2, 1. So it's in the ballpark of what is expected some years, but other years there's higher totals with 7 or 8. For bald eagles, this looks like the highest March ever with 203 compared to previous years with 119. It looks like 157 was the highest previous to this March. 112, 70, 30, and again, the farther back you go, the numbers are relatively small. So really good year, really good start for bald eagles, and we'll see if they continue. For northern harriers, we had 93, which was slightly more than last year's 85, but down from the previous years of 164 and 190. For sharp-shinned hawks, we had 65, which was right on par for last year when we had 69, but again, quite a bit lower than the previous years with 208 and 189. And then before that, we had a couple low years, 62, 30, 18. So lower than those couple years, but it seems like it's pretty close to some other years as well. For Cooper's hawks, we see pretty much the same thing, exactly the same number as last March, but that was significantly lower than the couple years before. And then before that, the numbers were lower again. For northern goshawks, we had 2 compared to the previous years with 0, 0, 2, 3, 0, 0, 1. So it seems right on par for the course. For red-shouldered hawks, we had 252, which was higher than last year's 223, but down from the 2 previous years that had 290 and 276. So it seems to be a fair amount of variation for red shoulders. As I'm looking down, I see 1 year was as high as 620, 867 back in 2004. So it seems like a lot of ups and downs on those. We had no broad-winged hawks, which is expected. We don't start getting those until April. For red-tailed hawks, we see kind of the same pattern we saw for a lot of other species, where we had 443, which was slightly more than last year's 394, but down from the 2 previous years, where around 816, 700. And as you go even farther back, here we have 1,005, 1477, 1633. So red-tail numbers used to be quite high some years. Rough-legged hawk numbers seem pretty low. We only had 13 this year compared to 23 last year and a high count of 64 the year before. As I look through, it seems like our 13 is the lowest that I see here out of these. As we get back to 2001, only 12, but that was for a relatively low number of observation hours. So it just seems like a really low winter for roughlegs. We had 3 golden eagles, which was up from last year's 1, but down from the previous year's 12. So it seems like a fair amount of variation on golden eagles. American kestrels with 44 is pretty close to the previous years with 47, 49, but lower than the year before, 2020, with 133. We had 9 merlins, which was up from last year's 7, but down from the 10 and 15, the 2 previous years. But if we go back even farther than that, everything looks like it's single digits. So nothing too unusual about getting 9. And for peregrine falcons, we had 3, which is lower than the 11 that we've had a couple recent years. But if we look even farther back than that, everything looks like it's relatively low single digits. And finally, short-eared owl, we had 1, and most years we don't have any in March, but there's a couple seasons that we had 2. So the overall takeaway, I wouldn't say anything looks too unusual other than bald eagles seem to be having a really good year, and rough-legged hawks seem to be a little bit on the low side. For the other species, we'll have to wait until we get into the peak of their migration for like the accipiters and the falcons, see how April plays out before we'll really get a picture for how they're doing this season. If we take a look at the forecast for the next few days, for tomorrow it's looking partly cloudy and windy in the morning with thunderstorms developing later in the day, with the potential for severe thunderstorms. High of 63, so one of the warmest days we've had so far. Winds west-southwest at 20 to 30 miles per hour. So it's a good wind direction. Southwest, west-southwest, there are some of our best winds. But my one concern would be that they're going to be a little bit on the strong side. It's saying 20 to 30, but other forecasts talk about stronger gusts, 50 miles an hour or more. So might be a rough day out on the platform. We might have to shelter beside the platform to block the wind. But I would expect there to be a decent amount of migration if we're able to brave the elements throughout the morning and maybe into the early afternoon. But it looks like sometime mid-afternoon that we may get thunderstorms that could shut the flight down early. For Sunday, looking sunny with a high near 35, winds north-northwest at 10 to 20 miles per hour. So this is kind of similar to yesterday, which was a little bit disappointing. Sunny day with those northerly winds, so I'm only saying light migration. And for Monday, mostly cloudy early with showers developing later. High in the mid-50s, winds southwest at 15 to 25. So that's still looking like a good day as long as there's not too much rain. So we'll keep an eye on that as it gets closer, but it seems like Monday could also be a good day. All right, one more time. Tomorrow is looking like a decent day with those west-southwest winds, although they may be a little bit strong. But I'm thinking that it could be a pretty big turkey vulture flight again. We're right in the peak time for the turkey vultures, and there's a lot of other species starting to increase in numbers as well. So hopefully we'll have a good day out at the Braddock Bay Hawk Watch. From Lego Birds, this is David Brown. Thanks for watching.